Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagle Injector YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue think they slate, dropping unrealistic mags. 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through to early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals that fill the day. Good morning, folks. Today is Tuesday. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is episode 30 of the 3-Point Blitz. If you're wondering why am I going with the pink color this time around, this time it's just a one-off because October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I decided it'd only be fair just to do it at least this one time, switch it up. We'll do the color pink in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And to be fair, the NFL's done this itself. Remember with the pink cleats, the pink arm sleeves, you know, the pink elbow pads, pink gloves, etc. So I figured, hey, since we're mostly talking about NFL for 1 week only, we're going to do the pink instead as the background color for the text. So for this 1 week only, we're doing it in honor of breast cancer awareness, being that it is October. And then next week, we'll go back to the usual black and color of the winning team we're discussing. But for now, this one time only, what is up? What is up? We're going to be doing the color pink in honor of breast cancer awareness, or this 1 week only. So that's the backstory behind it, if anyone's wondering. And we did slightly change it up. Background, you notice that's the Eagles' schedule in the background. I know it's not a close view, but I added it there as a backdrop. So, yep, just a slight change in scenery, but the delivery of the show itself is going to still be the same. We're doing the same to the point style that you've come to know and love from Nikki Stees. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. It's episode 30. That's right, folks. We've done 30 episodes, and we're going to kick this thing off like we usually do with the rant of the week. And we're looking for something to talk about. We're going to talk about something different. Some of you might think it's going to be about the Eagles or about the fight with Brian Breach and Juju Smith-Schuster, and I will talk about that later, but for the rant of the week, I decided to go in a slightly different direction. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the criticism that Aaron Glenn's receiving. People are already jumping on Aaron Glenn, saying he don't got what it takes as a coach. He might be on the hot seat, yada, yada. And here's the thing. You got to remember Aaron Glenn specifically came from Dan Campbell's coaching tree. Let's not forget. Now, we're looking at Dan Campbell now, seeing what the Detroit Lions have done. Even despite their loss to Kansas City, they're still 4-2. They've won the division 2 straight years. Still have a good shot at winning the division again. But a lot of people forget Dan Campbell, who Aaron Glenn wasn't a coordinator under, his first year, he didn't win a game until December, folks. What happened now with Aaron Glenn is the same struggle that Dan Campbell went through his first year as the head coach. So for all the people that are ranting about, they're talking about how Aaron Glenn's on the hot seat, he don't got what it takes to be an NFL head coach, you guys are forgetting something. He learned from Dan Campbell as a coordinator, the same guy who didn't win a game till December his rookie season. So let's not throw in the towel on Mr. Aaron Glenn just yet. Even though it looks horrible, and on paper this suggests he's not qualified, but we got to remember this, folks. First off, the Jets are a dumpster fire, number one. And if you look at where Aaron Glenn's at, there's a lot of parallels between him and Dan Campbell's first year in Detroit. Dan Campbell took over Detroit Lions in 2021 when they were a dumpster fire. Matt Patricia destroyed the morale in that locker room, and they didn't have a lot to work with. Dan Campbell had to build the Detroit Lions from the ground up. And it started with a painful first season where the team started learning to adjust to his style. They didn't win any games until late in the season. They won a couple games. The record was terrible, but you saw the team's morale improve, and that at least gave them some sign of hope. All right. Bad news is they only won 3 games, but the good news is they had future draft picks to invest in, and they built up with it. Now, the New York Jets are in a similar situation with Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn took over a dumpster fire team that doesn't have a lot going for it. He's having to build it from the ground up. They're not really winning any games early on, similar to the 2021 Lions. So let's not forget that, folks, before we throw in the towel on Aaron Glenn as a head coach. He's in a similar situation as his mentor, Dan Campbell. Now, if you come back next year, the Jets build up through the first round, and they're still not delivering, they're still a dumpster fire, then maybe you could talk about moving on from Aaron Glenn, but not right now. I mean, come on, you got to give the guy some benefit of the doubt. Maybe as the season goes along, they win some games. And to be fair, much similar to the 2021 Lions, the 2025 Jets are competitive in a lot of their losses. So I do see a lot of parallels between this team and the Detroit Lions with Dan Campbell's first year. Let's not forget that. So I'm not throwing in the towel on Aaron Glenn yet. And I do believe some of this, I'm not going to lie, some of this might have some racist ties to it. Because some of you guys that talk all that smack about him that Dan Campbell passes year one, some of y'all might be a little bit racist. And I'm talking about a lot of the media pundits that low-key hold different, that give white coaches more opportunities in passes than their non-white counterparts. So I do think there is some degree of racism and also some degree of selective memory as well involved in this. But let's not just throw in the towel on Aaron Glenn just yet. All right? He's stuck in a similar situation as Dan Campbell. Give the guy a chance. Maybe another year or so they get a better team around, they can do something. Now, if you want to criticize Justin Fields and say he's not the guy that's cut out because we have a bigger sample size to go off of, that's fair enough. I'll agree with you on Justin Fields. But Aaron Glenn, his first year as a head coach with nothing to work with, pipe it down a little bit. Give it some time. If you give coaches time, there's always a opportunity they could turn it around. Now, in Justin Fields' case, to be fair, like I said, he's had time, hasn't really worked out. I'm perfectly with you on criticizing Justin Fields. And I have some criticism for him myself. But before we get to that, Arku, you're going to love this next one. Because this is going to be about my team's disastrous performance in week one against the New York Giants. So, where do I begin? I'm going to start off by saying, as a fan, I gave them a pass for the Broncos loss. I did. I was being generous after the loss to the Broncos, but this loss to the Giants, man, dude, it's not just the fact that we lost to the Giants. It's the way we lost. Our second half offense is abysmal. And now after 3 straight games of barely scoring any points in the second half, I'm going to say it. Kevin Patullo is Brian Johnson 2.0. He's basically the white Brian Johnson, where same type of poorly run offense, talented team may help you win some games in spite of poor play calling, but eventually the poor play calling catches up to them. But in this case, it's happening sooner than it did with Brian Johnson in 2023 with the Eagles. It's happening here. I mean, what? I think with Saquon Barkley, dude, I don't understand. Why don't they try to get Saquon more involved in the passing game? Seriously. You can do a lot of 3-yard passes, a lot of screen passes with Saquon, similar to what you guys Eagles fans remember what we did with McNabb and Westbrook. Now, I know that was a different era of football, but those short screen passes can still work. It can still work. Even Kansas City in the early Andy Reid years with Alex Smith and Jamal Charles, they did that. A lot of short passes with Smith to Charles, and it worked out in the passing game. Even LaShawn McCoy in Buffalo, when his running skills started to diminish, he was still a decent option in the passing game for Buffalo. You can see something. They could easily do something similar with Saquon here, but for whatever reason, the Eagles just aren't doing it. So there's that play call into question. And the secondary, boy. Oh, man. I mean, we as Eagles fans said that Darius Slay was a little bit over the hill, that we should move on from him. And maybe he's not the same player he was 5 years ago, but boy, did we take Darius Slay on the Eagles for granted, did we? We certainly did. Look at what we got. Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson. And not just those guys, too, but Milton Williams, Josh Sweat. Oh, man, those are the 3 main guys we're missing. Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Darius Slay. Those 3 guys specifically, we are missing a lot on this defense. And you see, it's just not the same. It's like day and night with those guys last year versus the guys you have this year. And for those that are going to criticize Vic Fangio, let's face it. Every defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, or head coach needs talent around them to excel. And the Eagles are lacking talent on the defensive side this year. And we clearly saw it on Thursday night. No number 2 corner, not to mention Quinyon Mitchell, who's the best part of your secondary, left the game and did not return. That helped the Giants out greatly, being down their number 1 and number 2 options in the pass game. And no Jalen Carter, which really hurt the Eagles' pass rush. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's only so much Vic Fangio can do with limited talent. And that's not just Vic Fangio. That goes with any coordinator. It doesn't matter who you have. I don't care if you have prime 1980s Bill Belichick, who led the New York Giants with Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson. If you don't have talent on the defense, you're not going to do anything. Like I said, I don't care if you have 1985 Buddy Ryan leading it. If you don't have talent, what good are you going to do? It doesn't matter whether it be Wade Phillips, Buddy Ryan, Bill Belichick, and all those guys that led great defenses. If you don't have talent, there's nothing you could do with it. So I'm not going to give Vic Fangio too much flack because he's kind of handcuffed figuratively with the lack of players he has. And then on the flip side, it doesn't help that the Eagles' offense can't move the ball, which puts even more pressure on the defense. The defense gets burnt out. Now, with that being said, though, you kind of get the point. I got to give credit, though, to Jackson Dart. In 3 games thus far, we've seen Jackson Dart has fared pretty well for himself. He's helped lead 2 wins. He's had 2 games without a turnover. He's had a rushing touchdown in both. He had a passing touchdown as well against the Eagles. Now, do I think Jackson Dart has reached the ceiling yet? No, of course not. Do we got to see a bigger sample size from him through his rookie season before we get a true assessment? Yes. However, to be fair, we've seen flashes of potential, so we know there is definitely potential for Jackson Dart to lead this Giants offense, especially with Washington, which I'll get to later. It's not looking so great for them. They're not having as great a season. So there's an opportunity there for them. The Giants maybe win some games, turn it around, especially with the NFC's kind of looking wide open. Who knows? But credit to the Giants. Jackson Dart had himself a good game. And I got to say, man, I actually think this guy, I do think guy's got potential to be a future star for the Giants. I'll give him that. So congratulations to the Giants. And let's not just talk about that too. There's one more player, Skadibo. If I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but you know what I'm talking about, the running back, the white dude who ran all over the Eagles, no pun intended. I got to give him props too, man. He had himself a pretty good game too. So now I don't really be able to continue that trend against the better run defense. Time will tell. But one thing's for sure, Jackson Dart has some potential. And Arku's saying the NFC East is a trash division. Yep. Based on what we've seen in recent weeks, there's no argument for me there. No argument there. And I think kind of wide open right now. And to be fair, we haven't had a back-to-back NFC East winner since 2003 and 2004. Yeah, that speaks volumes about how crappy that NFC East is, man. But I'll say this. I will say this. Giants, congratulations. Good for Giants fans. You at least have some hope for the future with Jackson Dart. And for the Eagles, man, time to go back to the drawing board. Maybe they should have signed Asante Samuel Jr. He would at least help their secondary. Now, not the greatest option in the world, but it would certainly help. Certainly help. Now, moving on to a team who actually does have a good defense. We saw the Denver Broncos in London against the Jets. I'm not going to say a lot about this game because I'm sorry. This was a boring game. But the one good takeaway is the Broncos defense. Nick Bonet is having himself a really good season, showing he's worth that big contract. So good for the Denver Broncos. Bonita had a sack in this one. You also had Pat Surtain shut down Garrett Wilson to under 40 receiving yards and kept him to under 5 receptions. So good job by Pat Surtain, again proving that he's an elite defensive back. Man, I would dream to have Pat Surtain on the Eagles, but obviously that's just a dream. I know it's not happening. But hey, the Denver Broncos have a good defense. Alex Singleton had himself a good game with 5 tackles. So the Broncos defense did their thing. And yes, I know there's going to be the asterisk of it was the Jets defense, Jets offense, excuse me. And yes, that is true. But we got to talk about the Jets offense a bit. For those that want to say Aaron Glenn isn't cut out to be a head coach, again, he's taken over a dumpster fire team with not much talent. And when you have Justin Fields, who's proven he's not the answer to be the quarterback, there's not much the coach can do when you have Justin Fields, who consistently has shown he's more of a runner than a passer. He did it in 2022, 2023, 2024 through limited starts, again with the Jets, even with Garrett Wilson. I mean, Breece Hall, to be fair, had a decent game. He's the only one that gave the Jets offense a chance. But when you can't get anything going in the passing game with Justin Fields, there's not much you can do, no matter how much fire you try to bring to the sideline, no matter how much you try to rile up your team. You can only do so much to try to rile up the team as a coach. The players still got to get it done. And for the Jets, their offense hasn't been getting it done, and their defense has not been good this season either. So now to be fit now with the Broncos, well, they are 4-2. They're tied with the Chargers for first place. That offense, man, I'm not that impressed with their offense this year. They have an excellent defense. Like I said, Bonitto's having himself a really good season. Surtain's being elite, shutting guys down when he's on the field. But their offense, man, leaves a lot to be desired. And looking back now with that Eagles-Broncos game, if the Broncos would have had a better offense, they probably would have scored more against the Eagles and won in more impressive fashion in week 5. But Bo Nix, kind of having a little bit of a sophomore slump this year. Let's be real. It's not the same team as it was. I mean, Cortland Sutton's still a pretty good number one, but the offense just isn't as great. And against the Jets, a team that got smoked by the Cowboys, the Bills, and the Buccaneers, and the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers, shouldn't the Broncos have put up more points? I'm just saying. So while the Broncos get the win, they're 4-2. This team still has its flaws, particularly on offense and leading at quarterback, that have me concerned for the long term later on down the season. So congrats to the Broncos. For the Jets, it's going to be a long road to recovery. Now, do me a favor, Jets. Don't fire Aaron Glenn after one season. Give him at least a second year. Try to build up the roster during the offseason. Maybe try to get a quarterback in the draft and then go from there. Maybe you'll get better next year. That's all I'm going to say for now. So moving right along. Steelers versus Browns. Let's say this. The Steelers defense did its thing. Browns offense is trash. Dylan Gabriel, I can't even really say too much about the guy because the Browns offense is garbage with a rookie. All right. The difference between Fields and Gabriel is Fields has some experience. I'm expecting more out of him, whereas Gabriel's still a rookie in his second start, but he doesn't have much to work with. So I can be a little bit lenient with him. And but the highlight was Jalen Ramsey looking over at Kevin Stefanski, daring him to put Shedeur Sanders in the game. That was kind of funny. But to be fair, for Shedeur's sake, he's not. Shedeur Sanders would be stuck in the same situation as Dylan Gabriel. It's not going to go any better. But for the Steelers, they're 4-1. Now, there is the asterisk of they're taking advantage of a weak division. A Joe Burrow-less Bengals, a Lamar-less Ravens, and the Browns being the Browns. But you're still 4-1. Aaron Rodgers actually looks respectable behind the Steelers. Obviously, this isn't prime Aaron Rodgers. This isn't 2015 Rodgers. It's 2025 Rodgers. But to be fair, he's at least got something going. He did throw 2 touchdown passes. And DK Metcalf had himself a touchdown. Metcalf's doing pretty solid here. And Aaron Rodgers shows he still does have something in the tank. Obviously not the same guy he was in his prime, but he does have something left. And the Steelers have a pretty good defense. Actually, they do have a really good defense, and it's starting to come to form now. They kind of struggled early on, but they've gotten it together. Congrats to the Steelers. Moving right along. Credit to the Seattle Seahawks in this one for beating the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because I was on the Sunday morning show, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network, Football Talk with Bose, was worried because the Seahawks were down a lot of players on defense, but they still found a way to win. Oh, man. Jackson Smith had himself a really good game in this one. 8 receptions, over 160 yards, and a touchdown. And he was the shining star of the Seahawks offense in this one, with all due respect to Sam Darnold. So you had yourself a really good performance there. Even A.J. Barner had himself a big catch. He had 3 receptions for 71 yards. Cooper Kupp had a touchdown. And you did have on the defensive side, even with them being a little banged up, you had Shaquille Griffin stepped up with 7 tackles in this one. You had that. You had Ernest Jones had a few tackles. You had Nick Manrora had himself a pretty decent game. So the Seahawks, even with some injuries, still have a pretty good defense here. And they limited Travis Etienne to less than 30 yards on the ground. It doesn't matter who they have. They're solid in these early games. Referring to Seattle, yeah, absolutely. And I got to give the Seahawks credit, man. And spoiler alert, when we get to the end of this stream, I'm going to have the Seahawks as one of my winners of the week, because not only are they 4-2, but they win to keep pace with the 49ers and the Rams, which is most important for the Seahawks. Not just winning itself, but keeping pace in a tough NFC West, where you have the Rams and 49ers. And now the Niners, I'll talk about them a little bit later, but the Rams are still a pretty good team. So I give the Seahawks credit. Good job by the Seahawks getting this win here. Trevor Lawrence, he did throw 2 touchdowns, but it's Jaguars. Here's the thing. Yes, they did convert 3rd downs, but they had a lot of penalties in this one. And they struggled to convert on 3rd down going 4 for 16. And they couldn't get anything going on the run game with Etienne. So, yeah, your little 2 passing touchdowns may look decent in your fantasy league if you have Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback. But in the real game, this wasn't the best week for the Jaguars. But to be fair, they are 4-2, and they still could have They still could have a chance. We'll have to see as time goes along where both teams go from here. But good job by the Seahawks. They needed this win more to keep pace in that division. So credit to the Seahawks and credit to Jackson Smith, the defense, for limiting the Jaguars' run game. And, hey, I got to admit, Seattle's got themselves a pretty good team over there. So credit to the Seahawks for keeping things going. Credit to Sam Darnold for continuing his redemption tour. So good job by the Seahawks. Moving right along, the Chargers and Dolphins. I got to be fair. This ended up being a high-scoring game. This ended up coming down to the wire, so I got to give credit where credit's due. This ended up being a competitive game. Justin Herbert, to be fair, did throw 2 touchdowns. And we had an unheard running back by the name of Kimani Vidal, if I'm pronouncing that correct. A relative unknown, came out of nowhere and dominated in the ground game for a Chargers team who on paper had no life going on the ground game. I'm starting to think this is kind of more like a Mike Shannon. Jim Harbaugh, who's a run-heavy football coach, has found a way to get things going. And Arku, I'm glad you made this comment because you reminded me of something, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. So thanks for the comment. Thanks for the reminder. I will point that out in just a minute after we talk about this game. And I got to give the Chargers credit. They found a way, even down their number 1 and 2 backs. They inserted an unknown running back who had over 100 yards and had himself a pretty good game. Now, on the Dolphins side, you got Devon Achane, had himself a good game. As the running back, he had over 16 carries, 100-plus yards, 2 touchdowns. This was mostly the story of the running backs in this one, the unexpected running backs delivering in this one. And to be fair, the Chargers' pass game delivered too. Herbert still had 2 touchdown passes, so I'm not taking anything away. But, and not to mention, one of those touchdown passes, mind you, was to Vidal, who definitely was the player of the game for this one. So good job for the young man. Kimani Vidal, at least for week 6 of the 2025 NFL season, put himself on the map. So congrats to the Chargers for winning, staying on pace at 4-2. And I kind of see this kind of like a Mike Shanahan deal with Jim Harbaugh. Because remember back in the day, Mike Shanahan, he would, with Terrell Davis, Clinton Portis, Tatum Bell, had him sound ways to be efficient on the ground game with different running backs. I see something similar going on with Harbaugh this season. So shout out to them there. And for the Dolphins, credit to our group for bringing this up. Let's talk about the comments post-game. Tua said that it starts with leadership in terms of turning the ship around in the locker room. It basically, Tua, let's just put it this way. If you guys seen the comments, now I'm not going to play it here because I might want to get a copyright strike because you know how fickle YouTube can be. But Tua went out in the post-game press conference, if you don't know, and pretty much indirectly called out his head coach, Mike McDaniel, and saying that he doesn't have the leadership qualities to lead this team. When he said the changes need to start with leadership. Now, he didn't say the coach by name, but you could kind of read between the lines and tell that's who he was referring to. And it just start off, we'll say this. Tua is right. He is right. Yeah, the leadership is not efficient. And it clearly shows. You can even look over the past couple of years when they did have good talent. They were expected to be a really good team, but they didn't deliver on expectations. Now, that's in part injuries, but that can also in part be on the leadership. Mike McDaniel's entire tenure in Miami has underachieved with the talent he's had, particularly on offense. Now, at the same time, I got to say to Tua, your inability to stay healthy, getting repeatedly banged up and receiving concussion after concussion, being unavailable, does play a role in it too, Tua. So I feel like, while there is some truth to it, I do feel like it's to some degree a deflection by Tua as well to take the blame off himself. So I kind of feel I'm on both sides of the fence on this one. Not to mention but then again, you've heard the being late to meetings. Tua had sound the alarm that there are some players late to meetings, and that does play a role in it too, though. Now, I think what Tua might be trying to imply is that the coaches are letting it pass, and that may be a problem too, like your Sixers last year. Absolutely. And that's a great comparison to make. See what the Miami Dolphins are doing now to what the Philadelphia 76ers were doing. Because I can draw parallels between the two, the Sixers in the NBA in recent years and the Dolphins in the NFL. Talk about teams that have had winning records, been to numerous playoffs numerous times, did not really achieve much postseason success, and then follow that up with a disastrous season with a lot of locker room drama, turmoil with some of the players. We had that last year with the Sixers. Maxey taking shots at Embiid for being late. You had, the team played disorganized on the court. You're seeing the same with the Dolphins, players being late to meetings, the team drastically underachieving and being abysmal. There are parallels between the 2025 Miami Dolphins and last year's Philadelphia 76ers, two teams falling apart after several seasons of underachieving in the playoffs. Now, granted, the Dolphins did miss the playoffs in 2024, but remember they did make it in 22 and 23 and flamed out in the wild card round. Kind of similar to the way the Sixers had made their last couple of playoff appearances would flame out either in the first or second round. So there are some parallels between the two. And that's a good comparison. Now, Tua's comments shines the light of a lot of drama has tore apart the Dolphins. The whole Jalen Ramsey trade saga, making the Dolphins front office more focused on how do we get rid of Ramsey. The Tyreek Hill concern, worries about how do we make Tyreek Hill happy, taking the focus more on meeting individual player needs than meeting the team's needs, preparing as a team. We see that. Now we hear the stories of players showing up late to player meetings, Tua may be dropping the hint that the coaching staff's enabling it. Just a potential hint. We don't necessarily know that, but there kind of are these hints being dropped by Tua's post-game comments that puts everything into perspective. Dysfunction is tearing apart the Miami Dolphins. Now we move perfect. Actually, that's a perfect segue into the next game. You talk about the Baltimore Ravens, a team that's being torn apart by injuries and dysfunction. Obvious now, the coaching, do I feel it plays a role in it? Absolutely. Because even when the Ravens were winning teams and making playoffs and winning NFC North championships and hosting on playoff games, the biggest problem was holding leads, particularly performance in the second half. So we saw even when they were winning, there were flaws. But now you don't have the same talent on the field. The ship's completely fallen apart. Ravens are 1-5. Cooper Rush left. Tyler Huntley came into the game. Nothing was going right for them. And that's crazy because the Rams offense didn't even play that great. They only scored 17 points against the Ravens team in Baltimore. Ladies and gentlemen, we had Matthew Stafford had a strip sack. You had Kyron Williams wasn't that great in this game. Only had 50 yards on the ground. Ravens defense, to their credit, actually showed up and played. Derrick Henry actually had over 100 yards rushing, but it wasn't enough. The Ravens offense just couldn't get anything going in this one. That was the big problem right here. The big problem is their offense couldn't get anything going. People wanted to talk about Lamar Jackson. Remember a few years back when people said Lamar was overrated? Bro, have you not been paying? You saw the last couple of years when Lamar was healthy, they had really good regular seasons. And look at this year. You had Nate Landman had himself a good game on defense. I don't know what's going on with this team. But, man, I mean, then the Rams, though, even though they won, they didn't look that great in this game. It's like, yeah, the Los Angeles Rams won the game, but what did they do to really shine? And like I said, so this was kind of a boring game, but moving right along. Colts and Cardinals. Indianapolis Colts, let's give them credit. They're 5-1. They're looking like one of the best teams thus far early through the 2025-26 NFL season. You can say they're taking advantage of an easy schedule, and that's part of it. But to be fair, Daniel Jones is playing some of his best football. Jonathan Taylor is having another really good season on the ground, putting up a case for potential early MVP. Colts found a way to win this game. Now, the Cardinals, to their credit, were more competitive. Jacoby Brissett, I got to give him credit, had a pretty good game. Kept the Cardinals in this one. Now, that could have been because the Colts weren't as prepared for Brissett. Brissett hadn't really played much. So you didn't really have you didn't have a sample size with Brissett with the Cardinals offense to prepare for. So that played a role in the Cardinals making this game competitive. So I got to give Jacoby Brissett credit, giving the Cardinals a chance. But ultimately, the Colts won and took care of business. It's not always about necessarily how you win, but it's about winning. And in this case, the Colts won. They're 5-1. They're in control of the AFC South. Like I said, they have a really good offense over there. Jonathan Taylor, Shane Steichen are taking care of business. Michael Pittman Jr. didn't have a great game. You had Alec Pierce had that one catch, Mr. Go Deep in the passing game. But, hey, at the end of the day, the Colts are 5-1. They won this game. They're looking like contenders over there in the AFC early in the season. We'll see if they keep this momentum as time goes along, but they found a way to take care of business. Tyler Warren had himself the touchdown pick catch, and so did Josh Downs. But Jonathan Taylor, I got to say, with all due respect to Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor is the one who's been consistently getting over 100 yards on the ground, consistently keeping momentum going for them in the ground game. Jonathan Taylor, man, deserves props as a potential MVP candidate, like I said, for just consistently, week in, week out, carrying his weight with the ground game. He's having a similar season to what Saquon had last year thus far for the Colts. So I got to give nods to Jonathan Taylor and what he's done. But hey, congrats to the Colts. They're 5-1 in this one, and they keep momentum going. Switching gears, moving right along. Let's to our coup. Let's just get this one over with. Panthers over the Cowboys. Cowboys. In the weekly pick'ems poll we do on ESPN, I actually picked you to win. And of course, the one time I pick you to win, you guys disappoint. Oh, boy, as an Eagles fan, it's funny, but dude, for the Cowboys, this goes to show you, trading Micah Parsons was a huge mistake. Dude, if you could have just gave Parsons the money, especially being that you were down some guys, you could have just paid Parsons for this season, at least, just giving him his money. And considering how great their offense has been doing, Dak's been having multi-touchdown games week after week after week. If Parsons was still there, there's a good possibility the Cowboys might even be in first place in the NFC East with a better defense. And Micah Parsons, had he still been there carrying this defense, you might have been in there. But instead, you're stuck with no real star players on this defense. And now you're stuck with this garbage. 2-3-1. You're getting smoked game after game. And Rico Dowdle, remember him last year? Rico Dowdle's now had 2+ 150-yard rushing games. Now that it's, Chuba Hubbard being out, Dowdle's getting more carries, and he's been doing his thing the last couple of weeks but this is also against the Cowboys and the Cowboys and Dolphins. Now, Dowdle, I'll say this. If Dowdle can get another 20+ carry game and still put up a solid effort against some good teams, say, like if he can go out there and have himself a pretty good game against maybe a team such as the Bucs or something, then maybe there's something to be said about Dowdle having a resurrection with the Panthers. Now, Dowdle, to be fair, though, don't get me wrong. Obviously, he's having two 100+, 50+ yard ground games is never an easy feat, no matter the team you're playing against. So Dowdle obviously showed he has talent as a running back. But as far as him being a top-tier running back, I want to see if he can repeat this effort against the top defense. Now, Dowdle is a solid back either way. But as far as him being elite, let's see if he can repeat this effort there, then we'll talk about it. Arku says they got dominated on the line of scrimmage, which has become the story of the Cowboys defense week after week. And for Dak Prescott, I can't believe as an Eagles fan I'm saying this, but y'all starting to make me feel bad for Dak. You really are. He's actually out there trying his best to carry this team. He connected with Pickens, Ferguson. He's been doing his best to make it work, but it's not really working. And plus, no CeeDee Lamb doesn't help either. Even with Dak doing his best to carry this team, it's crazy. I'm actually saying I feel bad for Dak Prescott. But that's where it's at. But Panthers are now 3-3. Cowboys, they must be real proud of Jerry Jones, aren't they? Moving right along, we got the Patriots and Saints. Oy. Let's see. Now, the Patriots, they are 4-2 off the backs of an easy schedule. Drake May had 3 touchdown catches. Keyshawn Bott had 5 receptions, near 100 yards. And they found a way to execute and get the win now. I mean, they've won a couple games on an easier schedule, but Give credit where credit's due to the Patriots. You're finding ways to win games. Now, do I feel like they're going to hold up as the season goes along? I don't know quite about that. I feel like as the season goes along, you'll start to see teams like Kansas City excel, where teams like the Patriots, I think the Patriots could maybe finish 7 to 9 wins, but I don't know if they're really going to finish out strong as their record indicates at the moment. While Drake May is solid, I still want to see how he fares as the season goes along. If he can continue to do his thing in clutch games November and December, then maybe there's a chance. But for now, Patriots give credit where credit's due. Drake May shows he has potential to turn this team around in the future. Keyshawn Bolt, Demario Douglas have been pretty decent. Trayvon Henderson hasn't quite lived up to the hype as he did from his preseason performances, but there's still time for that to turn around. And for the Saints, they're right there with the Titans. Well, I'll have something to talk about with them in a minute. And the Jets for a top 5 pick, and they're in tank bowl contention. But for the Patriots, I want to see if they can keep this momentum going up as the season goes along. And then we'll see if how far the Patriots have really come along this season. But we're going to take a short break, come back, talk about the few 4 o'clock games and the primetime games right after a quick break. So stay tuned. Your boy will be right back. NFL fans, during the NFL regular season, every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, your boy hosting NFL Pick'ems exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network. Each episode will be featuring special guest YouTubers, predictions for the upcoming week, injury reports, roster updates, debates, and more. Every Tuesday exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Alrighty, folks, there it is. There's our plug for NFL Pick'ems tonight, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Going to talk a little bit about Week 7, do some picks. We're still going to see who's going to be on the stream. If we find out who the guests are going to be, I'll be advertising on my YouTube channel and X. But, let's return to it. Raiders-Titans, we're going to make this one pretty quick as far as the game goes, because there's something else to talk about. Well, the Raiders won the game. Ashton Genty looked decent. I'll give him that. Now, the Raiders win the game, but the Titans win the tank. And to finally solidify what we've been confirming all along, that Brian Callahan has no business being a head coach, the Titans axed Brian Callahan. Callahan's the first head coach gone through the 2025-26 NFL season. And it's perfect and rightfully deserved. It couldn't have happened to a better coach. We saw in Callahan's time with the Titans, holy smoke, that he had no business being a coach. Just because he's Bill Callahan's son, the same Bill Callahan who pretty much sabotaged the Raiders for the past 2 decades, where they haven't, to a point they never fully recovered. If you guys wonder what I'm talking about, Bill Callahan took over, the father of Brian Callahan, as the Raiders coach the 2002 offseason. They had a good team at the time. They made Super Bowl 37. Got destroyed by the Buccaneers, coached by the Raiders' former coach, John Gruden, who pretty much knew their plays because he still had to copy the Raiders' playbook. And from there, the Raiders completely prolapsed, did a complete 180, and they've only been back to the playoffs twice since then. And with Bill Callahan still kept his job for like 2 more seasons, and the Raiders were awful following that Super Bowl. So I say that his dad played a role in the Raiders' destruction. Ironically, his son Brian's final game as the coach of the Titans was against his dad's former team, the Raiders. Still coming off that Super Bowl hangover nearly 25 years later. Amazing, right? And for the Brian Callahan, he was awful as the Titans coach. We saw last year the team was abysmal. They had landed the number 1 pick based off how awful they were. Then they come back this season and nothing. Nothing going for them this season. And now, you see Cam Ward's rookie season, yet nothing going. Brian Callahan did nothing to improve Ward's confidence. He did nothing to really help with the passing game. They don't really have much to work with. And that's in part because of how awful the roster's been the past couple years, particularly last year under Callahan. So I don't blame him for axing Brian Callahan. He did no favors for Cam Ward through his rookie season. I guess the Titans figured get him out of there before he completely destroys the rookie quarterback's confidence in his rookie season. But they should have done this in the offseason. There was clearly red flags that Callahan was unfit to be the head coach, and they should have gotten him out of there. At least tried to get a decent coach around him his rookie season. Now, would that have really helped the Titans in terms of wins? When you look at their roster, no. But at least they could have gotten a somewhat sound mind. Like if they would have hired Aaron Glenn, they could have at least gotten a somewhat sound mind around him. Because Aaron Glenn would have been in the same situation with the Titans he's in with the Jets. Where maybe we wouldn't start great, but there's at least some potential promise for the future. And if you had a rookie quarterback with Aaron Glenn instead of Justin Fields, maybe you're talking an entirely different situation. But the point I'm getting at is you probably should have found a better coach for Cam Ward in the first place. Now, it really wouldn't help with win totals this season, but at least it would have gave some better leadership, which could come in handy as the season goes along. Maybe you play better, maybe win a few games late, build confidence for the next season. Now, the Titans, now that Callahan's out of the room, hopefully for Cam Ward's sake, he at least gets a decent interim coach to help the remainder of the season. That could at least help the guy get some confidence going. I mean, you're not going to win a lot of games if you're the Titans. You're probably still going to maybe get the number one pick, or if not that pick in the top 5. But you got to get, but at least get a decent coach. Callahan was just incompetent, even by beginner coach standards. And I don't think this is necessarily Urban Meyer level bad, but it's pretty bad. Easily one of the worst coach hires of the past 5 years, bar none. So for the Tennessee Titans, move on. Best of luck going forward. And all I can say is nah. Hey, goodbye, Brian Callahan. Now moving on, you had the Buccaneers and 49ers. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're talking the exact opposite situation. It looks like they finally got the right talent around them. And I picked the Bucs to win this game, and sure enough, they delivered at home, dropping over 30 points. Baker Mayfield having himself 2 touchdown passes. What else can we say? The Buccaneers, when you have yourselves a solid offense all around, and you got guys like Sterling Shepard, Cade Otton, Cameron Johnson, Igmega Igbuka, who didn't have that great a game. But the point is, the good thing about the Bucs is you have numerous options in the passing game you can throw the ball to, and that really helps out. And then it was Baker Mayfield is the MVP. I've seen enough, confirming that he's seen enough to make that decision. And what I've seen with the Buccaneers, what I'm noticing, and it showed this week against the Niners particularly, they're doing kind of what they're trying to do, something similar to what they had with Brady during those couple seasons, where you had an offense where you have a quarterback that can throw the ball, has multiple options he can throw the ball to and get the ball around. That's what Brady was good at during those 2 seasons, the season where they won the Super Bowl and they were still in contention the following year. Brady had numerous good options in the passing game. And the Bucs have, over the past couple of years, rebuilt that formula for Baker to execute with, where you have guys like Cade Otton, Sterling Shepard, Igmega Igbuka, Mike Evans when he returns, Cameron Johnson. You have all these different guys Baker Mayfield can get the ball to. And that's between Johnson, Otton, Shepard, and Igbuka. They had a combined 13 receptions combined. That's kind of similar to what Brady would do, where he had 4 or 5 receivers. He'd get 10 plus receptions too. So the Buccaneers have managed to successfully rebuild that aspect of their offense with Baker Mayfield. And with Bucky Irving in the ground game, you know, sometimes he could have himself a really good game. Sometimes he just makes the right plays that help out to keep the offense going. In this case, it was more so Bucky Irving making the right plays. He had 65 yards on 17 carries, but it was good enough to roll. And Mac Jones looked a little bit more mortal in this one. He had 2 picks, and unfortunately for the Niners, they lost Fred Warner in this one. Warner got carted off. He's going to be out for a while. And for the Niners, unfortunately, despite their 4-2 record, this is telling me that this is where the wheels start to fall off for the Niners, I'm afraid, because you lost Bosa, you lost Warner, Purdy injured, Kittle injured. McCaffrey's held up, but he hasn't been the same guy that he was. And you got to wonder how long he's going to hold up. It's not looking good for the Niners, especially where you still got the Rams and Seahawks, really good teams. You're going into that midpoint of the season, early midpoint, down a lot of your key players. This could be where the tide turns downward in the Niners' favor. And I really believe with the Niners, they got to make some changes to their the fact that they keep dealing with these injuries year after year. Now, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's poor conditioning, if it's a poor diet, or maybe it's poor diet plays a role in the conditioning, but the Niners got to do something. They need something changed. They need a new practice system, new conditioning coach, new nutrition, something. There's some of these aspects that got to change in order to stay healthy. Now, remember, the Eagles had that same problem with Doug Peterson, but with Sirianni, they started to improve on it. The injuries went down. Now, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it's Kyle Shanahan's system, where these players don't stay in the best conditioning to limit injuries. And I got to wonder, is that what we're dealing with here with the Niners? Maybe. But either way, it looks like this might be the point where the Niners start to fall off, because we've seen this numerous times. And what does it always end with when the Niners get battered with injuries? They always fall apart in the later stages of the season, whereas the Buccaneers are going in the opposite direction. Now, moving right along, the Green Bay Packers beat the Cincinnati Bengals. They get their win. They're 3-1-1 on the season. Now, for the Packers, though, Jordan Love had that pick against the Bengals defense. I wasn't that impressed with what I saw from Jordan Love in this one. I wasn't. Now, to be fair, Josh Jacobs, the ground attack, he had himself a touchdown at close to 100 yards, I believe. And the Bengals offense did score some points in garbage time later to make the game close. But that doesn't reflect the game. Don't let the 2 touchdowns by Flacco and the final score tell the whole story. It wasn't until late in the game that they got going. And now with the Packers, though, Jordan Love against the Bengals defense to have that type of performance did not impress me one bit. I'm sorry. I was not impressed with Jordan Love. The offense has to do better. The late game windows were whack. Yeah, absolutely. Some of the choices they picked, I mean, I don't know if it had to do with baseball or whatnot, or I don't even, that was not a good choice, though. Now, it's credit to the Packers. They got the win, but I didn't like the choices they put out there either. But the Packers win, but I got to see more from Jordan Love going forward. He's got to do better, particularly against teams like the Bengals defense. So Packers win, but I wasn't that impressed. Moving right along. Got the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Detroit Lions. Kansas City, I got to give credit to Kansas City, man. They actually looked like their true selves in this one. They look like they have a bit of a bounce back here. Now, me, I know Arku said it in the comments. I know I've seen other people say it. You never count Kansas City out despite their record. They came into this one 2-3. And guess what? This game proved that you can't count them out. And Kansas City did their thing and got the victory in this one. And actually, their offense looked good. Mahomes had himself a really good game. Travis Kelce had his best game of the season. And now you're getting at that point, you're getting Rashid Rice back. Oh, this might be the point Kansas City picks up and starts to go back to dominating. I'm a bit afraid about that. So NFL, be on notice. I mean, they got in there, beat the Detroit Lions, who were still contenders in the NFC, and had Patrick Mahomes had a really good game. They started to look like they're in sync. 3 touchdowns. Like I said, Travis Kelce had himself a pretty good game. And Kansas City took care of business in this one. I got to give them that. Hollywood Brown had 2 touchdowns. Juju had himself a pretty decent game. More on Juju in a minute. But don't worry, this one I'm not putting the blame on him for. But during the game, he had a pretty solid game. So credit to Kansas City for going in, beating the Detroit Lions. Do I think it's over for the Lions? No, this is just one game. They'll be back. They will be back. I have faith in the Detroit Lions. It's just a one-game deal. But any note, man, a serious note, congrats to the Kansas City Chiefs on getting this win and reasserting themselves. Even though they're 3-3 and the Broncos and Chargers are 4-2, I feel like out of the three teams, I'd say Broncos are the weak link because despite their 4-2 record, they've been the least impressive performance-wise. So that tells me right there that out of the three, if I were to pick one team by default to maybe have a fall off later in the season, that would be the Broncos. Plus the Chargers, they might start to, those injury woes might come back to bite them later in the season. And this might be the point where Kansas City turns it around. Rashid Rice coming back. You're fresh off a big win against Detroit. That could get the morale in the locker room going up. Could be smooth sailing for Kansas City from here. Potentially. We got to wait and see, but I feel like this could be a good turning point. Now, unfortunately, this game is a bit tarnished by a post-game melee. Brian Breach himself, there was a post-game incident. So after the game was over, it all started. Brian Branch, for the defensive back for the Detroit Lions, he was on the field. First, some of the players were shaking hands. Mahomes went to put his hand out for a handshake. Branch turned him away. Then Juju Smith-Schuster said something to call him out for his behavior. Branch wasn't happy about it, so he went up to Schuster and punched him in the face, which is completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. And then a whole melee broke out. Now, you had Pacheco was involved in this, but Pacheco was trying to cool everything off. And then, of course, Branch went over to follow through and attack him. Then you did have a lot of the other players get involved, but most of the other players involved were clearly trying to stop the fight, like Travis Kelce being one of them, but they were all clearly trying to stop the fight from escalating further. Now, I don't have a full count of who was trying to stop it, but I give credit to all the players that were actually making an effort to put an end to the melee and call peace. But for Brian Branch now, this is the seventh time he's been fined in 2 seasons? Now you're starting to notice a pattern with this guy and Brian Branch. And I know Dan Campbell said in the postgame, I love Brian, but I can't condone that type of behavior. And they shouldn't. Because if you do, what type of example are you going to set for the rest of the locker room? That if you're one of the coach's favorites, you can do whatever you want to. Once you start to, because if you were to set that example, the rest of the locker room starts losing its mind and it turns into a high school. And then that's when the team chemistry falls apart. So you got to send a message that this behavior is not acceptable. For the sake of the team's chemistry in the long haul, you got to send a message. And for Brian Branch, they're starting to develop a pattern here of getting fined repeatedly for incidents. Look, one time, that's one thing. Remember what happened with Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph? Now, what Garrett did swinging his helmet was wrong. But outside of that, we haven't really seen anything truly foul from Myles Garrett. So, okay, looking back on it now, one incident like that, okay, we can kind of let under the radar. But when this is happening repeatedly and there's a repetition of getting fined or suspended, you got to start to point the finger at Brian Branch and realize there's some disciplinary issues with the young man. Like I said, maybe one incident, one scuffle, okay, it happens. But when it happens repeatedly, yeah, we got to start to point the finger of blame. It's like, kind of reminds me of Isaiah Stewart in the NBA with Detroit Pistons. He has a habit of getting into fights repeatedly, and eventually, now he gets the label as one of the league's bad boys. It's that repetition. Okay, maybe one time, but it's happened repeatedly. Got to start looking at Brian Branch. And considering this has happened repeatedly, I don't feel a one-game suspension is good enough. Because this has been going on, like I said, it happened. This is the 7th fine. You got to do more when it's happening repeatedly. Or as Arku pointed out, Draymond Green repeatedly getting into fights with opposing players and even his own teammates. Look, okay, maybe like the Ron Artest deal, Malice at the Palace, that was bad incident. But when you look back on it, both sides played a role in that incident, and you haven't really seen anything from Ron Artest that crazy outside that incident. So looking back on it now, I don't begrudge Meta World Peace for that incident. But you see someone like a Draymond Green or a Brian Branch, you notice there's this pattern. It's a lot harder to criticize them. And truly, I believe Brian Branch deserves more than a one-game suspension because this has happened numerous times in terms of trouble, either taunting, fights, unprofessional conduct on the field. So you got to do it to send a message that tolerated. Crazy Juju Smith-Schuster, who's been known for being a bit of a diva, quote unquote, he's actually the innocent one in this case to some degree. Now, I don't think Juju should have said something necessarily to Branch to push it further, but in this case, that did not, even if Juju said something, we don't know what Juju said, but that doesn't excuse punching someone in the face, especially after you refused a handshake, because that's putting the idea into people's head that you're a sore loser and you were more upset about the way the game went. You decided to act on pride and take it out on the Kansas City Chiefs, who were the better team. That's the message I got from this whole incident, based on the way he first refused to shake Mahomes' hand and then went and actually physically attacked Juju Smith-Schuster over words. So, yeah, you got to give him more than just a one-game suspension. At least a 3 to 4 game suspension in my eyes. If you guys want to comment, let me know what you think. Go right ahead. But it's a shame that what was actually a pretty solid game got overdone by this situation. So that's all I'm going to say on this one. Moving right. It's almost made the rant of the week, but I wanted to talk about Aaron Glenn. Now we get to the Monday night games, the Falcons and Bills. First off, congrats to the Atlanta Falcons for their upset. Their defense, actually, they do have one of the better defenses, and they've helped them out big time in their 3-2 record. So give them credit there. Bijan Robinson, again, had himself a really good game, close to 200 yards on the ground. Credit to Bijan Robinson. He's putting up a case for the best NFC running back of the early portion of the season. And then on the AFC, obviously Jonathan Taylor for the Colts. But in this case, hey, you got to look at Bijan Robinson's really been pretty much carrying the way for the offense while Penix still adjusts to the NFL level. So I got to give him props there. Yeah, same here. Back and forth, you're right. And for the Buffalo Bills, though, you were 4-0. You've lost 2 straight to the Patriots and the Falcons. Now, to be fair, the Patriots do have some potential. For those wondering, well, didn't you say earlier that you're still not fully sold yet? I'm not fully sold. I want to see if the Patriots can keep this momentum up as the season goes along. But you're talking about you lost the game to a team that was pretty solid, but you were favored to win. Then you come back and lay an egg on Monday night on the road against the Falcons, another game you were favored to win. Now, granted, the Falcons are a pretty solid team. Whether Michael Penix takes that next step as quarterback will determine how far they go. But at the same time, if you're the Buffalo Bills, you should have won this game. You should have won this game. If you're truly the class of the AFC, you should find ways to win these games. So peace and blessings. Yep. Hey, Coach Ed, thanks for stopping by. Coach Ed Gladnew is one of my compadres on the Pick and Roll podcast, who hosts the She Got Game podcast every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're a fan of the WNBA, you can stop by on that. He does on his channel in the Hardcore Sports Network. I'm sure Coach is going to have a lot to talk about tonight, being that the Las Vegas Aces won the WNBA championship, their third finals win in 4 seasons. So I'm sure Coach will have a lot to say on that later. So check him out, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, thanks for stopping by, showing your support, Coach. Very knowledgeable about sports, both in terms of the on the field or on the court products and in terms of player issues off the field as well. very knowledgeable on that subject as well. So shout out to Coach Ed Gladney. And and as we were saying, Bijan Robinson, I give him props, but at the same time, and Coach says definitely will, confirming he'll have a lot to say later tonight about the WNBA Finals and the Aces' third Finals win. And like I was saying, for the Bills, though, on the other hand, it's a different story because I understand the Falcons are a pretty good team, but if you're truly the class of your conference and you're true Super Bowl contenders, you should be able to win against the Falcons. You should. But obviously they didn't. Part of the problem is their defense is obviously looking a little suspect. And we saw in this game, particularly against the ground game, not taking anything away from Bijan Robinson, but the Bills could not get the job done in this one. And their offense, last couple games, they've really struggled. Josh Allen's not looking like his MVP self anymore. And plus, he's looking kind of back to Brett Favre form. And by that, I mean, he throws touchdowns and interceptions almost. He had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, which, kind of a Brett Favre stat line. Remember a few years back, 2022-23, we criticized Josh Allen for having a lot of turnovers as well, and now we saw it in this one here. Because you take those 2 interceptions, flip it, maybe those end up being scoring drives. You end up winning this game 28-24, potentially. So that plays a role in the outcome as well. So like Josh Allen, I got to criticize. He hasn't been playing up to MVP standard the last couple weeks. Now, do I think the Buffalo Bills are done? Of course not. I'm not counting them out by a long stretch. But they're going through a couple game stretch where they've lost 2. You've had several underwhelming performances by Josh Allen. This does raise questions about their ability to contend as the season goes along. Especially being that we saw Kansas City have their first really good game of the season on Sunday night. You think this might be the turning point where Kansas City turns it around and gets back to championship form. And knowing how Buffalo struggled against Kansas City in big games, now this might be the point where you got to wonder, are the same issues going to plague the Buffalo Bills that we've known to plague them in recent years? And one of the benefits should be that the Ravens are a struggling team. So one of the biggest threats in the AFC in recent years is not as strong as they've been, but it's not really going together as well. But it's only a 2-game stretch, though, too. There's still plenty of time. Buffalo could easily get back to winning games, and they could easily turn this bad boy around. But moving right along, now we're going to close this out by talking about the Bears and the Commanders. Now, for the Commanders, obviously, I didn't want to say it at first because it was only a couple games, but it looks like Jaden Daniels is starting to hit the sophomore slump a little bit because they're not performing as well as expected. And Jaden Daniels, he did have 3 touchdowns in this one, but he also had an interception, and Commanders only had 24 points in this one. So, well, the stat line looks nice. It doesn't tell the full story. And here's the problem. Defense, the Commanders are in a position where they have themselves an old team now. They have the oldest team in the NFL, and that defense is falling apart. As Arku pointed out, DeAndre Swift had himself a really good game for this one. He had over 100 yards and 14 carries. He led the way. He even 2 receptions, 67 yards, one of them for a touchdown catch. And Caleb Williams, while he didn't play great, he played good enough in this one. He didn't make any real careless mistakes, and that played a big role in the outcome of this one. And this is where it was different. The running game played the big difference, especially in the later stretches. And another big problem, the Commanders, they couldn't really convert on 3rd down. When plus, they lost 2 fumbles too, so the turnover game played a big difference. In a 1-point game, 3 turnovers, pretty safe to say that played an factor. Now, as an Eagles fan, this is good, considering the dreadful week we had to see both the Cowboys and the Commanders lose. That at least does help out a little bit. Doesn't fix the Eagles' problems, but at least does help out. And for the Chicago Bears, I give them credit now. They're 3-2. It looks like with Ben Johnson, it's going better than it was with Eberflus. Now, we still think the Bears got a way to go before they can truly be a really good team, but they at least have a little bit of promise, and there's some potential they could get better. And like with Caleb Williams, the new coach, it's better. They're playing better this season. And credit to Jake Moody for hitting the game-winning field goal. He's redeemed himself after being cut from the Niners. And congrats to the Chicago Bears for getting the win. And for the Commanders, man, I feel like that old roster is starting to catch up to them a little bit. You're 3-3. Now, you're not out necessarily. And considering that the Eagles are starting to look a little bit weaker, there's still potential that they could end up winning the division. Especially with that and the Cowboys defense being a dumpster fire. But it's not looking great for the Commanders either. Problem is, I feel like they got too many veterans on defense. Wagner, Von Miller, they're going with the all 2010 team in the later stages of their career, and it's starting to catch up to that. That's what I'm noticing with the Commanders defense. Now, moving right along, we're going to close this one out. Going to talk a little bit about the winners and losers for week 6. Start off with 3 main winners in this one. For me, I'm going to start with Kansas City. It's not just the fact that they won, but it's the fact that they looked like their old selves against the Detroit Lions. Like I said, this could be the turning point. They get everything back together. So I got them as big winners. Second one, I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, beating the San Francisco 49ers, who are still a pretty good team despite injuries. And Baker Mayfield looking like 2020, 2021 Tom Brady, passing the ball around, getting 11 receptions to a combined 5 receivers. That's looking great for the Bucs offense. And now you're 5-1. You're looking like maybe there's an outside chance at home field or the number 2 seed. We'll see if that holds up as the season goes along, but it's looking great for now. The final winner, the Seattle Seahawks. You win, you're up to 4-2, but it's also the fact that they won and they keep pace with the 49ers and Rams, who are also 4-2. So it's the importance of the win based on the fact they're in a tough division. That's why I got them as one of my big winners. Now, the week 6 losers. Got to go with the Philadelphia Eagles, man. To get embarrassed and give up over 30 points to a team down its number 1, number 2 receiver, a rookie quarterback who was off a bad game against a previously winless Saints team. Momentum was looking all in your favor, and you go out there and get absolutely embarrassed. Not taking anything away from Jackson Dart, but when the expectations as the defending Super Bowl champs at 4-1 is you're going to beat a 1-4 team, you should do so, and you definitely shouldn't lose getting humiliated on Thursday Night Football. Second loser, even though their record's 4-2, I go the 49ers because you lost pretty convincingly to the Bucs, and you also lost Fred Warner. So now you've lost Bosa, Warner, Kittle, Purdy have been in and out of the lineup. Mac Jones did not look like he continued his supposed career resurrection, and now you're getting closer to the early midpoint of the season. You still got the Rams and Seahawks at the same record at 4-2 in a competitive division. That's not good for the Niners at all. And I got to go with my third loser. I'm actually going to go with, based off what happened Monday night, I'm going to go with the Commanders. Now, I'm not going to go with the Titans or the Ravens because that's kind of beating a dead horse. Oh, yeah, right, Penn State. Now, if this would have been including college and the pros, you bet I would have put Penn State as losers. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. They are. Penn State, embarrassing. They would be the big losers of the college football world for sure. You get beat back-to-back games. For previously in a game you should have won against, who was that again? I can't remember. Against UCL. Was it UCLA? Oh, my memory's stuttering right now. But back to the week 6 loser. The final loser in this one, I'm going to go with the Cowboys defense because you're going against the Panthers in a game where Dak had himself a multi-touchdown game. You couldn't hold off the Carolina Panthers enough to win this one. In a week where the Eagles lost and eventually the Commanders lost last night, a win could have really helped the Cowboys, but instead you fell short. Now you're 2-3-1. That's terrible right there for them. So we'll leave it at that right there. So for everyone that tuned in, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the 3-Point Blitz. In about a week or two with the NBA season coming back, I'm going to start incorporating some more NBA content into the 3-Point Blitz. And so we'll see these streams going probably hour and a half, maybe closer to 2 hours once the NBA season gets started. So with that being said, like I said, Arku, Coach Ed Gladney, thanks for stopping by. Said Coach confirming Penn State, they lost to Oregon, UCLA, and Northwestern. Last two, they were favored by over 20 points. True losers. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for confirming, Coach. Like I said, so Arku, Coach Ed Gladney, thanks for stopping by in the chat. Couple reminders later tonight on the Hardcore Sports Network. First, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Coach Ed Gladney on his channel on the network, hosting She Got Game. He's going to be talking about the WNBA season on that one at 7 p.m. And then at 8 p.m. exclusively on the network, your boy Nicky Stees hosting Week 7 of the NFL Pick'ems. We'll see who's on that later. So that's coming later tonight. So me and Coach got some content coming later tonight for the network. So be on the lookout for that. So again, shout out to Coach Ed Gladney, Arku for stopping by. Hope to see some of y'all in the chat on the Pick'ems. So with that being said, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Until next time, it's your boy Nicky Stees signing off. Catch you later. Have a great